Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Beyer from GenAI Insights, and welcome to another daily GenAI executive briefing where we discuss and rate the top news around generative AI. Our team of AI analysts rate each article as essential, important, or optional for executives and leaders at companies to save you time. Today's briefing is sponsored by GA Insights, and the discussion will be led by Tim. Kick us off, Tim.
Morning, everybody. Happy 19th of December. Pankaj, first article, please.
Sure, Tim. Yeah. So the first news item that we have for today is from Atomic AI. So Atomic AI, they have unveiled a large language model for RNA drug discovery.
Tanya, have you read this one?
I was just reading it, so I didn't fully read it, but I know we discussed it a couple of weeks ago, how we're starting to see more and more developments in discovery of drugs. And it's very powerful how these tools can really help discover things that were taking, more than 20 years, if not more, to discover. But I did not read this article specifically.
Okay, I read it. I think it's essential if you're in the life sciences industry, because it's another example of a production model using a different language rather than what we think of as a spoken language like English or Hindi, but using ribonucleic acids, which are what make up RNA and DNA, and generating molecules and formulas for discovery in drug companies. So if you're in life sciences, this is not the first one of these, and I don't think it will be the last, but it's essential to stay abreast of it. Outside of life sciences, this is interesting, but optional, just from the perspective of being a very important production model again. It's another
I think that anywhere you've got, I agree with, I think it's essential for life sciences. Anywhere where you've got an R&D space where computational models can advance your ability to, find new things and do new things, I think it's going to be critical. And then later, when we talk about what Microsoft's doing with the regulatory support, when you start thinking about life sciences in general, if you can help on the R&D piece, then if you can do anything to accelerate regulatory approval, boy, that combination is just incredibly powerful.
Agreed. So any other comments?
No, this is good. Essential for
life sciences.
Life sciences and optional for the rest.
So Paul, we don't really have a way of doing a double categorization.
To whatever extent, I think we can just record it. It's important. I think over time we start capturing that data, even as we're calling it out.
Yeah.
For the daily newsletter, Tim, I'll put essential in parens for life sciences.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have a clear subcategorization.
But it certainly is also a trend. So we will see more and more of those in verticals. Currently it's biotech, but it will be more like there's a lot of models being built for protein discovery and the like.
Yep. Anywhere there, I like the way John put it, because there is a specific language that's understood in chemistry and physics and biology, effectively there's a computational structure. And anywhere there's a computational structure, large language models are going to get in there and potentially be quite revolutionary.
Do we know what are the next industries that we think that's going to hit?
Material science.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Nutrition, what I was talking about, protein discovery, this was in nutrition.
Yeah. Cybersecurity, I think that as we've got one article coming up here, I think cybersecurity, the sphere of the computational modeling of social cognition, individual cognition, threat surfaces, all that stuff, I think is incredibly amenable to computation. Yep.
And regulatory compliance, enforcement, both sides.
Yeah, no question. Regulatory, this is going to be very interesting because I actually think there'll be a center of gravity movement from bureaucratic top-down stuff to behavioral model-based stuff. Regulations in the future, I think, will be models.
Agreed. Okay, Next, Ankaj.
Okay. So the next one is from cybersecurity front, as John mentioned. So Fortinet Advisor has launched generative AI assistant that sort of accelerates threat investigation and remediation.
Okay, John, so you were just talking about this. You want to lead us off?
Yes, sure. I think it's I would say important or maybe optional. I don't know enough about this, the creation of the binary, coding of this and the new kinds of, validations that take out the probabilistic capability.
That's a different article, I think,
Oh,
isn't it?
sorry, I'm
This
mixing
is
them up.
the Fortinet one on using multiple large language models in cybersecurity.
Oh yeah, no question. I important or on cybersecurity essential. I mean, but I would say important just because I think a lot of people know that that's what's needed here. So
Yeah, and I would agree that's important. I mean, the article talks about, hey, this is not their first product. They've been doing this for a lot of years. But what it's new is that it's going to be easier for us to query all of the information that they've had there, right? So what made me think is many companies, right, they have the SOC providers and they have the analysts who then tell the customer, hey, this is going on in your network and, you should really look into this and that, right? The human is the one interpreting the data from these logs and then talking to the customers. Well, that layer is eliminated really as we start using AI and have more of that natural language approach to finding out, what do I need to do next? How do I fix this? I no longer need that human analyst in a way. So made me think of that. But I think it's important. And they've been doing AI in their products for a long time.
I mean, I think this is one of 30,000 software companies are adding a large language model capability. But Tanya, I like what you said. I don't know if it eliminates it, but it seems to it enhances. So it enhances query into the structured traditional database and enhances remediation reports, which I thought was very interesting. It's not clear. That's not clear how to me. It actually enhances security alerts.
I'll play the cynic here and say optional. I've worked for Radware and previous to that F5, which are both cybersecurity companies, and if we wanted to, we could probably find every Fortinet competitor and find a similar news article for them. To your point, Paul, and it's good that they're implementing large language models, but even as they say, cybersecurity has been on top of sort of the leading edge of machine learning for a long time already. So I don't think this is much news, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, I think the news is if a software company's not putting this spell check capability into their product.
And AWS did announce at reInvent that they're doing exactly this kind of thing within their own security systems as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm with Adam, actually. There are many variations of this stuff. It will be within the software or outside of the large language models. It's a security layer. Everybody and their brother is going at it, which is good. And the market will have a choice. So we can rate it as important to say to the audience, look, this is happening, and this will be available essentially in a little bit with a lot of options.
Okay.
But as this particular one, I would say optional.
Okay, so
I can live with that.
I want to grab just Bruce. Bruce, you agree with all this commentary? Or?
Yeah, of course. I think this is kind of mandatory when you're looking at cybersecurity software. But I also agree that it's going to be hard not to be me too in this space, because this is something that the first thing that a customer is going to ask is, are you using GenAI, or are you supporting this with LLMs? All the typical questions that everybody's asking now about AI. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be expected.
Okay, I'm hearing optional. Can we live with optional?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
Okay. The next one is from Microsoft. So Microsoft is training a model to handle SMR nuclear regulatory process.
Amanda, you have thoughts on this one?
So I didn't fully dive into this, but just the title, the nuclear. So it's interesting. I was part of a funding call where a couple companies got in and they were trying to get funding, and one of the things that they're looking at is Gen AI and nuclear. So I find that interesting that this just came up again, and I've seen it like twice in a week. But see, this article, the last article, different articles, I'm torn between this whole use case thing. You know, how do we want to categorize all these individual use cases? And nuclear, to me, if this is what I think it is, I mean, how many of our customers are really, you know, looking at nuclear solutions right now? I feel like it's far and few in between. So I feel like this is optional.
Yep. Well, regulatory processes are broad across a lot of industries.
Right.
So yes, I agree. This is a specific case. The other interesting thing here is one of the reasons Microsoft is so interested is because they're exploring building small reactors for their data centers because of the power structure needed. Literal power, not human power structure, electricity power. And small reactors require the same regulatory clearance as large reactors. So it's, it's complicated.
I think that from a strategic, this is one of the most strategic things I've seen with LLMs. When you look at, okay, if Microsoft's sitting there saying we're going to vertically integrate all the way down to the electrons, right, which is what they're saying here, and then they say, okay, how can we completely change the risk and the speed of that? And the answer, one of the critical points, is regulatory approval. So the fact that they're willing to structurally try to change regulation by creating an AI that will help do that, I think that is real strategic thinking, and I think spectacular. So for people who want to think about what this can, what AI can do to industry structures, this is very powerful.
We had an article that we read, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, from Baker Hughes, the woman who started to use generative AI for her ESG team.
Right.
This article made me think of that, and that in this idea of, hey, there's so much information out there, so many documents, so many regulations, so many policies, so many things that they have to track in order to report their ESG. And this woman or her team brought all of this all together. I don't know. There's when we talk about verticals, I think this whole reporting towards ESG is it's like the legal use case that we've talked about. It's going to be very transformative in those areas.
Yeah, so let me be into this. I'm trying to understand it. So if I want to do a nuclear reaction, I've got to submit a 300, 500,000 page regulatory document. It's got to be precise and triple checked and quadruple checked. It's got legal liability. This just allows me to create it a tad faster, right? That doesn't make the government go any faster. It's still a bunch of bureaucrats looking at it.
That's interesting. Many years ago, I did some work on computer-aided new drug approval, CANDAs. And what Microsoft's not going to leave it just as a submission. What they're going to do is start to go to the regulators and say, look, what are the criteria? They're going to use the model between them and the regulators to try to accelerate the whole process. That's what Big Pharma did with these CANDAs. So they're in conversations at the time with the regulators saying, okay, we're building this thing. Here's how you're going to interrogate it. Here's what the new rules need to be to get to take our model against your policies. And I would bet dollars to donuts that's what Microsoft's going to do here. So I think you shape the whole regulatory approval process by doing this.
Okay, so John, you're arguing that Microsoft's to be on both sides, the submittal and evaluation, and that the government bureaucrats want to go faster.
Yes, and then when you look at where in drugs, it's how long the patent window is. Here, it's very much around how long your capital is at risk. You got I don't know, probably a couple billion building one of these small ones, right? Sitting there, and your ability to get it approved and to get it going, has huge economic return.
Yep.
Right, but it is by nature. When I read this article, it's scary because I'm agreeing with John that that's what Microsoft would try to do and change the regulatory process. However, it's applied to nuclear and all these reactors. It's a little scary, especially since it's LLMs, right? And with a lot of ambiguity, right? So, but for our audience, I think a trend where it applies to regulatory is important, at least. It's a scary.
Yeah, but I think glued on that one though. If I understand this correctly, this is a proposed technical capability to have a faster lane or fast lane for regulatory approval. That's going to be politically difficult. So I think it's maybe the capabilities coming in, then the politics will have to catch up.
Well, the optimistic view, and having spent a few years on both sides of this in terms of regulatory requirements and oversight, is that, like we talk about with other things, the LLMs will take a lot of the drudgery out of form filling, and there's just a lot of enormous hand-holding that has to be done that doesn't advance or retard the cause. It has nothing to do with whether something gets approved. It's just a lot of bureaucratic process. So if you eliminate a lot of that, the optimistic side is that the regulators and the builders, in this case Microsoft, will have more time to work collaboratively together and make it safer. There'll be more concentration on the actual nuclear reactor than on filling out the forms and getting through the process.
But has that been true for the last 35 years in drug discovery? Because certainly there's been 35 years of technology.
I think it is. Yes, I was involved in some of that, and I absolutely think drugs get through faster and they are safer.
Great, great. Thanks.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing important.
Yep.
Important.
Okay, next.
Okay. So leading with scary here, OpenAI buffs their safety team, and they have given the board veto power on risky AI. So this is related to the super alignment and AGI piece from OpenAI.
Okay, so Julio, we haven't heard from you yet. So did you have an opinion on this one?
No, I don't. Yeah, I'm going to say no. I don't.
Okay. Bruce, what do you think?
Well, I think they're trying that Sam Altman is trying to appease those that thought that OpenAI was moving away from their mission. And was becoming more concerned about growth and profit and valuation.
Okay, I will put a stake in the ground then and say, I think this is optional. I just wrote an article on this, shameless plug, that, allowing a technology company to determine the safety of their own models is pretty much a fox in the hen house. I don't see how it's anything else. So they can make what they want of all these different structures. They are still making the products and regulating the products, which is a complete conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, Tim.
Yeah. And we got Larry Summers in there we've got evidence is completely clueless at looking at systemic risk. You got to love it.
Yeah. Optional. Any other discussion on this one? Okay, next.
I'm just agreeing marketing, Tim. It's a good marketing document.
Next.
Yeah. The next one is from IBM Watson X and Jackson AI. So Jackson AI is saying that they have a solution for the hallucination problem through its technology called domain-specific AI language.
So, John, this was the one you were referring to earlier, right?
Yeah.
You want to start us off here?
I can start us off with my ignorance. I don't really understand the review technologies they're talking about in terms of, you put into, a binary language and then you run it against certain algorithms that help you with, accuracy. I don't know how you fundamentally get past the probabilistic nature of the LLMs other than to do a pre-processing and a post-processing to parse what's going in and what's coming out for different kinds of, truth systems. You know what I mean?
That's what they're doing. Yes, I think of course, they don't explain in much detail what they're doing, but the implication is they're creating a more structured representation that they can then run through Boolean tests and other kind of logic tests. And then they sort of vaguely mention, it's a hand-waving article at that level. They vaguely mention other kinds of things to try and prevent hallucinations.
Yeah, but
Julio, Adam,
if they're
Amanda,
fundamentally, could I just say, if they're fundamentally saying they're going to parse it and put it into a multimodal model, then okay, yeah, but that's not just an LLM, right?
Yeah, maybe Adam and Julio will have another. I think it's optional.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I think I'd probably say optional as well. The only really interesting thing is it's talking about the history with Jackson AI and the U.S. Air Force, and
Right.
if this means that quietly, IBM's really going after that government and enterprise space by just sort of sliding in as a layer under some of these other things that already have that business. It's significant in that regard, but generally speaking, I agree it's optional.
It's really interesting. We get a good model that has creativity. It should be applied where it's creative. What we're trying to do with capping hallucinations, it put handcuffs on it, and that's really interesting how it will shake out, because it's not clear yet. Because you can't really control hallucination. That's how it's made. Either you go deterministic and use other AI methods, or you go probabilistic and use creativity. There's one or the other. There's a good combination sometimes, use creativity and then use deterministic. And it is in the verticalization of knowledge, really. That's where the answer is.
Yeah.
But it's shaking out. That's what's happening. So I would say optional.
Luda, I just want to highlight that a little bit. I'm increasingly really getting frustrated in general with the industry's term of hallucination. I think a better term is randomness. This is a feature that was purposely designed in, Julio,
Exactly.
to ask the AI experts to put creativity, to put probabilistic, to put randomness, and then to be criticized for it. I just find it confusing.
Well, I think I would argue, and I've argued against hallucination from the start, but I wouldn't say random. I think again, it's a compression algorithm. So if you have a picture of the world and you want to compress it into so many bits, you have to decide which bits you're going to keep, and that's a probabilistic problem. You can't keep them all. And if you want it to be smaller and more compressed, you're going to have to throw away more. And so you have to have probabilistic functions that decide what your trade-offs are. That's what's really going on. So it's not random, but there is only so many bits, even in an LLM, that you can store. You're going to throw away most of everything because there's a lot more knowledge out there.
So maybe probabilistic answers maybe is a better term, right? So we designed this machine to have probabilistic answers, and everyone's going apoplectic that they're not 100% deterministic, and we've got this implicit assumption that these things asymptotically come together in some kind of like singularity nirvana, where we have probabilistic when we want to on a creative side, but never when we don't want it. It seems ludicrous to me.
Yeah. Agreed.
Anyway, back to the tactics of the article. Anybody arguing with optional for this one?
I could go either way, optional or important. So one thing I would say is, I think, Adam, you mentioned about them working with the government. So that's literally the company I'm working with right now, the startup. We're working with government contracts, and it's reducing hallucinations, because in certain industries, you cannot have any kind of hallucinations. And so for us, it's the defense industry and the intelligence part of this. So, I mean, they really need to know where the answer is coming from that this thing's spitting out. So it's really important. But again, I go back to specific use case. Are the majority of our listeners really concerned with a government solution, or it's it varies to me. But as far as I could be argued into important for the fact that even though what everybody was saying is this hallucinations were built in on purpose, things like that, for one reason or another, though, certain industries, they don't want any type of hallucination. So it really is a battle. So on that respect, I could say that I'm for important because it's an example. But again, here we go, a use case. So I could be talked into either for this one.
Well, hallucinations are, as we don't like the term, but confabulations or probabilistic outputs are a problem across industries. So that's the only reason for arguing at paying more attention. But to me, it's a little hand waving. There's not much specifics in the article about what they're doing or how successful they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are no specifics in the article at all. And I looked on their website and looked through their articles and stuff, and there was nothing in those things either. I looked for research for this approach, and there was nothing out there. So I don't know what they're doing. They don't say what they're doing. So I think we can't take it seriously right now. The main reason to take it serious is that the government is involved. So maybe they know something or have been told more than we know right now. The only thing I can think of is the only approach I could think of that fits with the text here is that they are basically trying to validate or verify that the conclusions that the model came up with are supported by the information that was fed to it. Because I think they mentioned a SAT solver, so they have facts according to facts, and then they try to do this solving thing to make sure that it can be like a proof that the output matches the input. That's just going to slow things down. Who knows if that's even possible or where, like we don't know anything about this process. So I'd say optional until we get more details.
Julio, that's part of what we're doing exactly. You find the source so that whenever you say this piece of intelligence, you say, we didn't just make this up. We found it based on this information that was located in this huge amount of unstructured data and reports.
Sure.
So that's literally it. Yeah, that's one of the ways.
But what exactly is that process? I mean, are you saying like these two sentences are similar, or these words came from this input, or are you saying this output, we analyzed it and it states this fact, and the input had a combination of facts that you could had a set of facts that you could combine into the output fact? That's what the SAT solver kind of does. A SAT solver does, but I don't know if that's what they're doing here. That's just kind of conjecture because we don't have any details.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons to put it as optional for now.
Yeah, I think it's optional. I think this is an important area, and I think we've talked a little bit before about the use of graph databases, more deterministic models. The challenge is when you need a model of the world, and that's what is being done here, a tiny approximation of common sense reasoning in a larger model of the world so that your probabilistic output can be tested. And I can tell you, having been glancingly involved, if you just think about it, people who are talking in large reams of text and streaming and other kinds of things that are communicating and maybe aren't communicating to our benefit, they're not going to talk about what they're talking about. They're going to talk about cats, or they're going to talk about pumpkins, or they're going to talk about something else. And you're trying to intuit whether, in fact, they're really talking about something more dangerous. And you can't be probabilistic to, you want a great search engine over a large amount of unstructured data, but you also have to verify why your reasoning leads you to believe that maybe these aren't talking about cats. And that is complicated.
Yeah.
So anything that helps there is going to be valuable across the board because regular old industries have similar problems. If you're answering a customer's question, they don't want it to be super probabilistic because they want it to be correct about a product or something like that. So these kind of reasoning systems, I think, are going to be important to integrate, and we'll see. But this one is so hand-waving, I would still vote optional.
Yep.
Tim, I just want to do a quick shout out to some of the audience participation. Harvey, Jimmy, and others have been commenting, so thank you for that. And just to highlight on, we're at 28 minutes. I know I'm part of that problem.
We've been going for a while, but it's been a rich conversation. Yep. Okay. Optional, any other votes? Okay, optional it is. Ankaj, are there more?
Yes, one last one might not be that important. So Snowflake
Yeah, I can cut this one
has
off. This
acquired.
is not about generative AI. This is just
Right.
about a data company acquiring another data company.
Sounds good.
However, the ability of securing a clean data room is a very important ability for enterprises when they do generative AI. So these will be married. I don't know whether Snowflake is the vendor or is best at it. That's Julio and Adam maybe can bear on it. But they really talked about the separating and putting your data in the clean room separately for a specific application. That's
Right.
critically important.
Right. All sorts of data technologies are needed, but they're also used for lots and lots of other things that don't have anything to do with generative AI. It's just data
True.
clean rooms.
True.
But Tim and others, before we leave, one of the comments online here I think is a really good one, which we haven't addressed, is how do viewers get the links to these articles who are viewing this live? We don't have to solve that now, but at least want to identify the problem. It's a good problem that we need to think through.
Yeah, real time as opposed to, because we do give them the links, I think, in the ratings, don't we?
Yes.
No, but they can't follow along as we go.
But
So
not as we're talking. Yeah, so we should
Right.
find a way to publish the links in the chat.
Yeah, maybe it's on our website or probably a different couple of solutions, but I just want to highlight that.
Thanks for the suggestion, and we will take it under account and attempt to do something about it promptly. Okay.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Wonderful job, Tim. Thanks for all the listeners. Thank you for going over, everyone. We'll continue to work on keeping our rich conversations short, and I was part of that problem today, but have a good day, everyone. Thanks.